Redneck philosopher Kris McNeil. Let's hear it for Kris. Good job. Oh, the variety here we're getting. All right, now it's time to get our final storyteller up here. Excuse me? The brother of, you're on page 4, and I'm on page 3. Okay. It's time to bring up our 4th and final storyteller. He is actually the brother of Kris, and you might know Eric, and he's a teacher and a storyteller. He's a great math teacher, and his name is Eric McNeil. So let's get Eric McNeil up here. Eric is doing several story slams up in Denver, and very good storyteller. So let's get ready for this one.
Love you, Kris.
Love you too, man.
This is not a story that I tell my students. I remember the exact moment that I became self-aware. I had just gotten off the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland. I remember walking through the park and it was perfection. Everything was immaculate and clean. And I looked up through these giant trees and I thought, this is beautiful. And I realized I was telling myself that this is beautiful. And it was like, well, hello, nice to meet you. And I was 8 years old. And when I joined the Mormon church when I was 15, I learned that Mormon children aren't baptized until they're 8, until they understand the difference between right and wrong. So I was on this trip to Disneyland with an aunt and uncle. They wanted me to come along to keep their son, my cousin Sharon, company. He was a good, close cousin of mine. We get home, back to where my mother is living with her third husband in Farmington, New Mexico. And I'm glad they took me to Disneyland because my mom and my stepdads, we never did anything like that. And I have to go spend the night over at my aunt's house. This is my stepdad's sister. And I end up having to sleep in the same bed with my step-cousin. And he's about 3 or 4 years older than me. And it was pitch black in this room. And I remember he said, do you want to play a game? It's called, he said, I learned it in Boy Scouts. And the only thing I knew about Boy Scouts was that whenever I visited my birth father, he'd say 2 things. Let me give you a haircut, and you should join the Boy Scouts. And my step-cousin said, this game is called Stick in the Mud. And he explained to me how you play the game. And I'm glad that the room was pitch black, because I'm glad he could not see the look of fear that I had on my face. And I said, no, I don't want to play. And I couldn't see his face. I didn't know what he was going to do. But he dropped it. And I don't remember anything else except I did not sleep that night. I stayed awake all night with my back against the wall, pressing my butt against the wall as hard as I could. And I get home, and I was sitting in my bedroom on my bed, and I was staring at the curtains closed in front of this window. And they were heavy curtains. And it must have been the middle of the day because the sun was out on the other side of these curtains, and I was just staring at that orange rectangle of glowing light that was filling my room with that glow. And my mom came in and sat down on the bed beside me. She said, are you okay? And And I didn't want to tell her what had happened. But I know it wasn't because I was embarrassed to tell her what had happened or what he had said. I didn't want to tell her because I was nervous about how she would handle it. I was nervous that she wouldn't do what I needed her to do. So I finally told her, and she freaks out, and I interrupt her, and I say, but you're going to talk to his parents, right? And as soon as I saw the hesitation in her face, I regretted even telling her that she promised me she would. And the day finally came, I saw his parents come in, and they all went in the kitchen, my stepdad, my mom, and his sister and her husband. And I pretended to be playing Hot Wheels in the living room because I was listening very carefully to everything they said. And when they got up to leave, my heart sank because my mom had said nothing. And I knew right then that for the rest of my life, I was the only person that I could count on to take care of myself. Well, I eventually asked my mom why she left my birth father. And she said, well, I was only 18 years old. She had me when she was 18. And she left him, I think sometime during when she was 19. Sometime it was around 1. And she said, I left him because I was just a kid, and I didn't realize that when I married him, he just wanted me to have a bunch of babies. And by that point, I knew that would probably be true because he remarried and he had 9 more kids. Well, time goes by, and I become pretty close with one of those 9 half-brothers and half-sisters, Kris, and he's about 10 years younger than me, but we ended up having a lot of conversations about our growing up experiences, trying to make sense of it. And one time we're having a conversation, and in the middle of this conversation, he said, well, my mom left him too for a while. And I said, well, why? And he said, well, she realized there was going to be some abusive stuff going on. But when she went to her parents said, you got to go back and work this out. He's your husband. And then I realized nobody made my mom go back. And for that moment, I thought, well, then maybe my mom just didn't want to tell me why she was leaving them. And she was looking out for me. She was protecting me. Because I realized right then that my brother Kris is stronger than me. That I couldn't have handled that type of thing. And so I was grateful that my mom may have got me out of that. Got me away from the thing that would have destroyed me for sure. Well, if this was a year ago, and that would have been the end of my story. But I was in some therapy last fall for various things, and I was talking to the counselor and trying to understand why I trigger when I feel threatened. And I think we all trigger when we feel threatened. But I want you to understand, I teach freshmen in high school, and I will have a 14-year-old kid walk up to me and say something like, I heard you were talking about me. And the tone of their voice, or whatever it is, I will literally, physically start shaking to the point where I can't even talk clearly, and I don't want to say anything to the kid because I know if I start, they will hear the fear in my voice. And so I'll walk away. And so the therapist is saying, well, do you have anything that might explain something that happened to you? And so I told him this story. I said, well, when my grandma Ina, this is my birth father's mom, when my grandma Ina was getting pretty old, in her late 80s, to that point where when you'd visit her, she would take you on the tour of her house and say, now there's my funeral clothes. And if you want anything, put your name on the bottom of it. And turn stuff up and people would put their name already on it. And she starts telling me stories about her childhood that I had never heard before. And they're breaking my heart. I had no idea of the kinds of things she endured in her life that she never talked about. She just held it in. And then all of a sudden she just blurts out, and I'm sorry. I said, sorry for what? Well, when your mom was married to that Hal Bynum, her second husband, you would show up to my house covered in bruises. I said, what? She goes, I didn't know what to do. I said, Grandma, don't worry about it. It's not your fault. I'm fine. And I thought about that. I thought, why don't I remember her second husband? I had these vague memories every now and then. But why only a couple? Where are the rest? And I told the therapist this, and I said, is it possible I blocked him out? He said, it could be. But he says, do you have any other verification of what's happened? I said, no. I didn't want to really dig, But now I suddenly did. And I realized my mother was born in about 42, I think 42, and she had a younger sister that was born in like 53. So her younger sister was closer to my age than her age, my Aunt Mary. And so I contacted her and I said, look, when my mom was married to Hal, did I show up to your house covered in bruises? And she instantly said, yeah. I remember I was about 11 or 12. And it was weird because when you'd come over, you'd get my bedroom. So I got kicked out to the living room. And she said it was kind of cool because in the living room, I could hear what everybody was talking about in the kitchen. And she said they were talking about you. She said they were talking about how they might try to get custody of you. This is my mom's mom, my Grandma Peggy. And then she said that Grandpa went over and threatened him. So I realized my mom had not protected me from what might destroy me. But I found myself just bawling. Just these tears were coming up from deep inside of me. It was the kind of crying that's not angry, it's not hurt. It's just this comfort of realizing that back then I wasn't alone, that somebody was looking out for me. Well, I've had 3 of my own kids. And when they were little, they would beg me to go do sleepovers. And I would say no. And they would say, why? And I would say, because I say so. That's why. Because not only was I going to protect them from others, I had to even protect them from my own stories. Eric McNeil.